He wanted to save them from the fear of death. Okay, so recently I'm thinking about this, and I'm praying, and I open my Bible to a passage that says, and they stood, the friends and the family, they stood and watched. And I said, huh? What does that mean? And I kept thinking about it. Why would God indicate to me that particular phrase? And then it hit me, oh yes, of course. These dear people who love Jesus couldn't understand what happened. They're looking up at the cross. This man that they've loved is on the cross, dead or dying. These people feel helpless. They can't do anything about it. And they're wondering, why? Why on earth did this happen? Why didn't he get out of it? He could have said something to get out of it. Why didn't anybody help him? Why? And they thought, well, our life as we know it is over. And they were right. Because in 3 days, Mary came back to the tomb with the other women, and the stone was rolled away. And she looked inside, and there was no Jesus. And she said to the two, apparently angels that were in there, where is he? Where have you taken him? And then she heard her name being pronounced, Mary. And she looks up, and here's a guy, and she says, Rabboni, Rabbi, here you are. And he says, no, just don't touch me, but go and tell the others that I've risen. So the others didn't get it. They thought she's Meshuggah, she's crazy. And it was only when Jesus walked through the door, walked through the wall, and appeared among them, that he says, okay, where is Thomas? I want him to put his fingers through the holes. He was back. I'm back. And alive. Not only was he alive, but apparently for 40 days, people saw him. He had conversations with him. And then one of the final times that he was seen was Peter and his buddies. He said, come on, let's go fishing. Because they hadn't really understood. They hadn't really understood that what Jesus had taught them was that life was eternal, that man was spiritual, that my identity and your identity is spiritual and never separate from God, that infinite God good is within us all, that there's one mind, one God permeating the universe everywhere, and that we are one with that God. That is the science. And so when Peter and his friends are out fishing, they didn't get anything because they're looking at lack. They're looking at the fact that they've lost everything. Their life as they know it is over. They're hunted. And the morning comes, and they're headed for the shore, empty-handed. And there's a guy on the shore said, hey, you guys, did you get anything? And they said, no, nothing. And this guy says, well, why don't you cast your net on the right side? And they did. And there were so many fish that they couldn't draw the net. The net was breaking. There were so many fish to draw it in. And then the guy on the shore says, "Hey, come on, I fixed you breakfast." And there was fish and bread and on the grill, on the barbecue. And of course, Peter and his friends were feeling kind of stupid, and it was pretty clear who it was. And that was amazing. He was back. So for the next 300 years, when people knew this story and greeted others who knew the story, they would greet each other by saying, "He is risen." And the fact that they were no longer afraid of death was what freed them from the fear of death and from the terror of the centurion's sword. And the Roman Empire started to fall apart because this mindset of fearlessness started to permeate the Roman Empire. And one of the things that helped do this was the communication system of the Roman Empire. And that's possibly one reason why another reason why Jesus was born when he was born, was this network of roads throughout the Roman Empire allowed this story to travel. And it was shared and shared and shared, these parables and this story of overcoming death, and that life was eternal and man was spiritual, made in God's image and likeness, and God was love. God wasn't a God on high that looked down. This was the story that was shared throughout North Africa, up and around all of the Mediterranean, and up into England, the British Isles, and up into Germany. There were people traveling, traders, that went all over the world telling this story. So around 327 AD, Emperor Constantine was seeing his empire fall apart, and he thought, "Oh, geez, what am I going to do? I know, I'll join them. I'll become one of them, and we'll hijack the system from within, and we'll take our Roman pagan gods and take these characters from this story and replace our gods and their personalities with these people." So Jupiter was the god of gods, and Jesus, started with a J, got replaced as the god of gods. And at the Council of Nicaea, which lasted quite a long time, they decided which scriptural texts, which old ancient texts they would put in a book. Any scriptural text that really taught about man's spirituality and that God was all in all, and that this science, anything that was very specific about this science or anything that gave any clout to women, was thrown out. That didn't get put in because the guys had to be in control. And also, only priests could read this set of ancient texts. So he basically shut down learning, shut down the free speech, and because he had built hospitals all over the Roman Empire, and the hospitals were not making money, he shut down spiritual healing. So if you were healed by a healer following the way, that's what they called these people who followed Jesus's teachings, they would put you on a rack and say, "Really? Were you healed? I don't think so." and you would be killed saying, oh, if any priest said, I think you're a heretic, or oh yeah, really, you've been healed, or if it was a healer, they'd put him on the rack. So people got the message. They never said anything about healing anymore. They realized, well, that's not going to, your life is at stake if you say anything about healing. So that's the reason why spiritual healing was lost and why the Dark Ages ensued. And the Dark Ages went on until 1480, when the Gutenberg press was invented. And they started printing Bibles. Well, it was outlawed to read the Bible, these sacred texts. Only priests could read it. So in the early 1500s was when the plague had decimated 2/3 of the population of Europe. And Martin Luther was a priest, but he read the Bible. And he was able to heal people based on his understanding of what he read in the Bible. And he said, people ought to be able to read the Bible. And so this science then became kind of like a covert thing that people would secretly, read this Bible. And when King Henry VIII wanted to have another wife within the Catholic Church, he couldn't do that. So he started a new church. He said, I'm going to have a new church. I'm going to be the Pope of the new church, and I'm going to let you read the Bible. Well, when it was legitimate and legal to read the Bible, people started realizing that they didn't need a pope. They didn't need someone higher up to tell them to be a go-between between them and God, but that God was within them. And so they became Puritans. And that Puritan faction of people then left England, and after a short stay in Holland, moved to the New World, where for 200 years they were in charge of that area. And the young woman who was a Puritan and who read her Bible, she discovered or rediscovered this science that in 1866 wrote the book Science and Health, and that book was given to my grandmother in 1910 and has then helped our family up till now, to today, which is 2015, January 2015, and it's very exciting. That science is that man is spiritual and perfect, never separate from God, so never guilty of S-I-N, self-imposed notion of separation. And God doesn't die. So God's spiritual idea can't die. And that's the reason why Jesus came when he came. And that's why we owe him endless gratitude for what he did. He really did save mankind. And it was because he showed us that life is eternal. And so, dang, that's what happens when you're a Sunday school teacher. You ask these questions, why did he come when he came? And through doing all that research, I realized, oh, that's the answer. So anyway, just letting my light shine.